Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. Welcome to the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, and today is part 5 of our strategic thinking series on separation and Black settlements and what happened. And we're going to be talking about environmental injustice. So be a friend, tell a friend, and we'll be right back in a few.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome to the Sajdah channel. Good morning, grand rising to everyone. Man, today's day 5. We made it. I should say I made it because I've been the one getting up early and writing this content for you all so that we could begin to strategically think about how to govern ourselves. Okay. Is separation a new concept? Not really. We know that. And do we need to develop? Who do we need to develop? And how do we need to develop in order to successfully separate? So in light of our series, we're also doing on money psychology, of which Sunday night is the last night in that series. We're going to review some mindset shifting stuff, answer any of your questions. You should use the QR code that's right here on the screen in order to jump in. And then we're working on making the series available on a pay-per-view basis because these are like really detailed. On the show, we got to do Cliff Notes versions because these are deep subjects. And the subjects I put together, they're for people who are doing for self, for builders, for developers. So I want to jump right in. Okay. And as always, I have to start with point number 4 of what the Muslims want, given to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Wow. I am doing some intense deep dive into some things that are not really publicly accessible. And I have really, really, really grown in another deeper degree in respect and in love with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his mind, just who he was as a person and when he was among us, and then who he's evolved into. The evolution is really coming full circle for me, from that humble beginning in Georgia to Detroit, to being on the run, to being in Chicago in various residences, to departing and transitioning, and then how that folds into today with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Just got there's so much I can't wait to share. So one other thing I want to mention to you guys is that on June 26th, some of you may have gotten the invitation. If you didn't get the invitation, don't wait for the invitation. Okay. But at 6:00 p.m., we're going to be doing a networking event at the Elijah Muhammad House. It's for Black Muslim business owners and conscious business owners. If you want some predatory stuff, if you're a hustler, don't come. This is for conscious builders, do-for-selfers, developers, because what we want to do is try to circulate our dollar amongst ourselves longer. We want to get to know each other. We want to develop partnerships. We want to begin to understand what each other's skills are so that some of the initiatives that we're going to be working on very soon, we want to make sure that we know who's who and who's what and who can, jump in and be of assistance, a whole host of things. Okay. And so we're going to also do, there's a group of us and we're building up to creating a chamber. But there's a group of us that are going to do a couple of podcasts on how to network, on how to create your elevator pitch so that when you go somewhere, you know how to talk to somebody about your business. I can't tell you how many people I talk to and they really can't properly introduce themselves, or they don't know how to concisely share what it is that they do. Their stuff's just too complicated and it's too much all at once. And so we want to teach you how to take a slice of the pie and offer people a slice instead of trying to stuff the whole pie down their throat. So we're going to do that. That's on the 26th. So what you got to do is you got to RSVP. Okay. So you want to go to ElijahMuhammadHouse.com, scroll down, and there's a button next to the flyer that you can click, and it'll take you to a place where you can register. The event is free. We're just asking that you donate something. You can donate as little as $1 or as much as $1 million, however much you can at the time. The goal is to get you there. And we hope that you would continue to support the museum. All right. Okay, here we go. Point number 4 of what the Muslims want, given to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You can often see it on the back page of Muhammad Speaks newspaper back in the day, and now on the back inside cover of the Final Call newspaper. It reads like this. We want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate territory or state of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years until we are able to produce and supply our own needs. And in a much talked about interview, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan appeared on NBC Television's Meet the Press. It was April 13th, 1997. He was interviewed by Tim Russert and David Broder, and this subject of separation came up. And here is some of the dialogue. Tim Russert said, in preparation for this interview, I read the literature that your organization puts out and publishes, and I like to go through it to find out what you believe and how it affects America. This is your newspaper, The Final Call. He holds it up and he says, which comes out once a month and on the back page. And then the minister interrupts him and says, once a week, because the paper is published once a week. Mr. Russert goes on and says, once a week on the back page is the Muslim program. What the Muslims want, and if I can go through a few of these, let me put one on the screen and get your reaction. Okay. And he put point number 4 that I just read on the screen. The first is in terms of territory, and you'll see, since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality, we believe our contributions to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand for complete separation in a state or territory of our own. He asks, is that your view in 1997, a separate state for Black Americans? And the minister eloquently responds, first, the program starts with number 1. That is number 4. The first part of that program is that we want freedom, a full and complete freedom. The second is we want justice. We want equal justice under the law, and we want justice applied equally to all, regardless of race or class or color. And the third is that we want equality. We want equal membership in society with the best in civilized society. If we can get that within the political, economic, social system of America, there's no need for point number 4. But if we cannot get along in peace after giving America 400 years of our service and sweat and labor, then of course separation would be the solution to our race problem. Now, I've been saying this every day. I know the concept of separation bothers a lot of people, both Black and white. Some view this concept as an extreme overreach, and many are downright afraid to even think of the subject. I want to ease us into the concept because this concept of separation was performed numerous times during Reconstruction. Except absent of protective military, had many of those towns sustained, we would be having a different conversation today. All right. So we want to talk about how do we strategically think? How do we avoid this kind of thing? What do we need to be prepared for? Okay. Let me see. I also want to always point this out because many of us are already separated. Some of us are living in suburbs where there are primarily Black populations. You got a Black city council, a lot of times a Black mayor. or the town would easily elect a Black mayor. In those cases, we have to learn how to govern ourselves, and we have to make sure that we know these principles and topics so that we are governing and working to create a civilized society and not just doing more of the same. Okay. Some of us are going to go to new states and new cities and rebuild. Some of us are going to do that. We're going to build from scratch. There are a lot of people doing that now. And some of those settlements are already popping up. There are some of us that are talking about going to abandoned cities throughout the state of Illinois, Ohio, different places like that. Again, this show is very apropos for those of you who are thinking about that, because we also should be thinking about, why is the city abandoned? Was it an environmental issue? What are some of the things that plagued the city when it was populated? And what can we do now to make a difference? So some of us are going to be separating like that. Others of us are on here now going, I ain't going nowhere. I don't want to go nowhere. Some of us like being the only Black person in our neighborhood. Some people just feel comfortable and are so addicted to the combative nature of living in a community that's racist that we just don't want to go. We say, I don't want to give up the fight. Whatever your situation is, these principles of building a civilized society, learning how to strategically and tactically think, are extremely important. So separation right now as it stands is multifactorial. In fact, it has always been multifactorial, because during Reconstruction, there were more than 1,200 historically Black towns. That was at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century. Okay. Some of them were there long before the Civil War. Okay. Some of them were incorporated and unincorporated. They were predominantly inhabited and governed by Black people, and were established to create safe and autonomous communities amidst widespread racial discrimination and violence. They existed from coast to coast. In each pocket of the U.S., Black entrepreneurs, farmers, and other professionals, they broke ground in new locations throughout Florida, California, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and beyond. Places like Oklahoma, for example, that had 50 Black settlements. Okay. Black families and individuals thrived economically and politically without the violent oversight and control of white supremacist culture and policies. The dramatic loss of these Black towns and settlements was not accidental. And the loss of all of this land, 90% of this land, 15 million acres that were acquired during that time. By 1997, we had lost 90% of it. It is a big reason for the issue with our intergenerational wealth. And let me say this. Stop buying into the brainwashing techniques that make you think Black people are lazy. We're all just ghetto. We don't take care of stuff. I said this yesterday. I don't know too many Black people that don't take care of things that they own. Oftentimes, people don't take care of things that they don't own. But if we own a house or we own a car, most times we're going to be the ones, we're going to be taking care of it. I would guarantee you 70, 80% of us, we take care of what we own to the best of our ability. Some people are dealing with money issues and financial issues. And so there are things that maybe they would like to do to their home that they can't necessarily do right now. But we'll find a way to take care of the stuff that we own. We work. All right. Don't let nobody tell you that we don't work and we don't make money. We can't be the largest consumer group on the planet spending over $1 trillion a year if we don't have the money in our hands. We got to get the money in order to spend the money. The problem is that a lot of us are not spending the money amongst each other. And so it's like a hot potato. So we get it, we spend it, and it lasts in our community like 6 hours. And that's the piece, one of the pieces we got to work on. But we also got to work on this acquisition and retention of land. All right. Now, a lot of things were weaponized against these Black towns, not only during Reconstruction, but today. Okay. Towns where predominantly Black people live, where we govern, there are a lot of legal things that are happening. And there's a lot of violence that oftentimes happen. We've been covering that all week. And today we're going to talk about the environmental injustices that occur in these Black settlements that we need to be mindful of as we begin to separate. Okay. Tomorrow, I'm going to touch on the self-improvement process that's going to be important for us to separate, because a lot of us just aren't fit to be living next to civilized people. Some of us are predatory. Some of us are just sneaky and evil. I know people who, when I see them, they're like so in love. We're great. We're best friends. And everybody that I know that talks to them ends up acting crazy or tripping on me or my programs or initiative. That kind of stuff, you can't be with us. You can't be with us. That kind of undermining, that haterism, that lying, that looking down on people, judging people. You got people right now looking at things that we put up online and they scrutinizing us. Oh, look, she look a little tired today. Or, oh, what's she wearing today? Or what's she talking about? Or let's make sure don't nobody look at that. Let me tell you something. When you go through this self-improvement process and you develop a relationship with Almighty God, Allah, there ain't nothing nobody else can do to destroy the table that's been prepared for you. Not a damn thing. Nothing. And when you are a person who has survived things that most people would have broke down over, this is God's way of preparing what he needs to bring in what he wants. You know, a hit dog, a holler. So if that hits you, then holler. I'm just saying, because that kind of behavior, those kinds of mindsets, if you're a group thinker, if you're waiting for somebody to tell you to go and you're waiting for everybody else to tell you what to do, and it's something that you can do on your own and you don't need no permission to do, then you really not a builder. You're not a developer. If you sneaky, shiftless, you're not a builder. You're not a developer. You're satanic. You are Satan. So I'm just saying, self-improvement and those with the right mindset, those who are at least willing to work on themselves. And let me tell you this, don't let society tell you that all Black people is jacked up, we poor, raggedy, naked, and out the doors, and we ain't spiritual. Let me tell you something. God has been working in our community for a very long time. And there are a lot of us in just about every walk of life. Not only are we in just about every walk of life, but there are a lot of us in those walks of life who are highly spiritual, highly obedient, and ready for the next assignment. So you can sleep on it and be acting like Satan if you want to, but it's not going to be good for you. Not today. It's not going to be good for you. And your downfall is going to play out in the public. This is how Allah is working today. Things that used to be done in the dark now are being lived out loud. Lived out loud. So we got to be mindful. We got to be mindful to support, love one another, network with one another, take care of one another, look out for one another. Sometimes people just need a good word, a little encouragement. Go talk to somebody, say, you know what, let me get your nails done today. Let me pay for your haircut. You was going to waste it on Starbucks anyway. So think about how your money leaves you and how it circulates. And you say, you know what, I was about to just go blow this and spend $500 downtown. Let me give it to a good cause. Let me support somebody. Let me take care of somebody. That's what we got to be thinking about when we start talking about money psychology. What is the energy behind your money, and how do you develop and determine the energy behind your money? It's the intention and where it goes. It's a big part of it. So we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow. Okay. I got on a tangent there. Excuse me, my allergies cutting up this morning. All right. So let's talk about environmental injustice and what is it? It is regulatory neglect and the exclusion of Black towns from land use decision-making processes have severely determined their ability to protect themselves from environmental injustice and climate change-induced natural disasters. It's regulatory neglect. Okay, it's a lack of agency that leaves these communities disproportionately vulnerable to harmful environmental impacts. Environmental injustice is rooted in housing discrimination, segregation, and intentional citing of hazards in Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color. Again, this is why we have to keep this concept of reparations on the table, because there is a lot of systemic damage that has been done to our community and our ability to thrive as a people. We keep having to get it out the mud, generation after generation after generation, because something happens and we're not properly strategically planning. But timing is everything. And the beautiful thing is that those of us that are here now, we have all of this history to use as a template so that we can strategically carry out this assignment. Okay. So marginalized communities or Black communities are more likely to live near landfills. You know, sometimes you just see that, you just smell something, it smells funny. Hazardous waste sites, polluted industries, highways, and even pipelines. Okay. All of this leads to higher rates of asthma, cancer, lead poisoning, and other health issues. A lot of us thought that when we ran out to the suburbs, we would be escaping some things. But a lot of us now find ourselves in Black populated suburbs where the water's bad, there's environmental pollution, there's bad energy from power plants and other facilities. So we're going to talk about that today. Let's think about this data here. How many Black people here on the podcast have asthma or some kind of allergies? Raise our hands. Black Americans are 40% more likely to have asthma than white Americans. Did you all know that? 13.4% of Black children have asthma. 7.3% of white children have asthma. We are 5 times more likely to visit the ER for asthma-related issues. Black children are 7 times more likely to be hospitalized for asthma than white children. Okay? Black Americans are nearly 3 times more likely to die from asthma than white Americans. So when we are selecting sites to build communities, either to build from scratch, either to take over a wasted city, or even in current towns where we now find ourselves governing ourselves, the environment must be first and foremost on our minds. We already know what these environmental factors are doing to us. I want to break down this whole asthma concept here for a minute. Why is asthma so prevalent in the Black community? Number one, environmental exposures. Black communities are more likely to live near highways, factories, waste facilities, power plants, which increase exposure to air pollutants. Okay? Do you all know what nitrogen dioxide is? NO2? Well, nitrogen dioxide is a harmful air pollutant linked to asthma. A 2021 study published in Science Advances found that Black Americans are exposed to 55% more NO2 pollution than the average American. Children living within 500 feet of a busy road have a much higher risk of asthma, disproportionately affecting Black and Latino children. Did you guys know what particulate matter is? Particulate matter refers to tiny particles or droplets in the air that are 2.5 micrometers or smaller in diameter, about 30 times smaller than the width of a human hair. These particles are small enough to pass through your nose and throat and penetrate deep into your lungs and even enter your bloodstream. What are some of the common sources of particulate matter? Car and truck exhaust, power plants, industrial processes, construction sites, wildfires, wood burning, cigarette smoke. Okay? What else contributes to asthma? Poor housing conditions like mold, pests, dust. Okay? Which you often see in some of our disinvested neighborhoods. What else? Residential segregation. Historically redlined neighborhoods where Black families were pushed into poor quality housing still experience higher pollution and worse asthma outcomes today. These neighborhoods often lack green spaces and are urban heat islands, worsening air quality. Again, when you are in these suburban towns, even inner city, suburban, small towns that are now populated with Black people, you have to work on the air quality. And how do you work on that air quality? Some things are having laws in place where a certain number of green spaces are required. Tree canopies, things like that. So all of this has to go into our urban planning. And we got to look at it metaphysically and physically. Because trees just by themselves, we already talked about this, I think it was vibrate at 300 megahertz. That's enough to heal and change your energy and change the air quality. So planting trees, mindful of how many trees can be down, that's all part of planning for recession. Okay. Oftentimes, these areas that contribute to asthma, there's a lot of healthcare inequity. We face more barriers to accessing care. You have underinsurance or lack of insurance, implicit bias in treatment by medical professionals, less access to asthma specialists or preventive medication. And then the last thing that we all know, and I realized this when I was traveling a lot to Africa. This is why I was going to move. Stress and systemic racism. You know, when you get to places like Africa and you get on the continent and you don't have the stress of racism, you can literally feel your central nervous system adjusting. You can feel your body and its natural healing elements start to kick up. Because chronic stress from racism, poverty, and community violence has been linked to higher asthma rates and worse asthma control. Stress can exacerbate inflammation and immune response, making asthma attacks more likely. Now, a lot of these statistics I just read from you, they come from the US CDC and the NIH. That's the Center for Disease Control and the National Immune Health. I think that's what it stands for, NIH. All right. And oftentimes what happens in these cities where we have these environmental injustices, political representation just isn't there. So we don't have a say-so over where factories or factories can go, where they can dump waste, how to clean up the resources, environmental regulations, all of that. So keep in mind with a lot of these places that we may choose, you may have had a waste dump, because what's happening now in a lot of these cities, they built the towns over top of waste dumps. So it used to be a dump site. They call themselves cleaning it out. They built a town. People lived there for 40, 50 years. Now they take Section 8 vouchers. They lowered the housing prices. They attracted us into these communities. And then all of a sudden now we're living there and we don't even know that it used to be a toxic waste dump. So we got to do our research. And all right, I'm going to keep going. Okay, environmental injustice. We're talking about these Black settlements, right? Played a crucial role in undermining Black towns during and after the Reconstruction era. This is from 1865 to 1877. Okay. Environmental injustice contributed to their economic decline, displacement, and in many cases, outright destruction. This injustice was not always recognized as environmental at the time, but it manifested in systemic practices of neglect, exploitation, and environmental degradation in or near Black communities. All right. Now, here are some of the things that contributed to the environmental issues. Number one, when they destroyed the towns by fire, flood, and infrastructure projects. Let's take the famous case we talk about all the time, Tulsa's Greenwood District, the Black Wall Street, 1921. Though after Reconstruction, this is a crucial example of environmental injustice through man-made destruction. White mobs, with help from city officials, looted and burned 35 square blocks of the prosperous Black neighborhood. Over 1,200 homes destroyed, estimates of 100 to 300 people killed, 10,000 Black residents displaced. Fire departments refused to intervene, demonstrating environmental neglect and racial bias in emergency services. We talked about that as well. In governing ourselves, we have to make sure that our emergency response teams and emergency response resources are adequate, they have proper funding, proper equipment, and that they know how to respond in a timely manner, and that they are staffed by trained individuals. Okay. Then they got the flood control projects. So water was used with levees and dams. I'm going to give you two cases of this. Oscarville, Georgia, 1912 to the 1950s. Oscarville was once a thriving Black town, and it was gradually depopulated after racial violence in 1912. The remaining land was later flooded to create what? The famous Lake Lanier in the 1950s. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers provided little compensation, and graves were often left behind or relocated without consent. Then you have Seneca Village in New York City, 1855 to 1857. It was a predominantly Black settlement forcibly evicted to build what? Central Park. Okay, about 1,600 people were displaced through eminent domain. Okay, it was just before Reconstruction. It set a precedent for environmental racism via land seizure. Okay, the other weapon that they use, locating polluting facilities in or near Black communities. We saw this in Uniontown, Alabama, a majority Black town located on the site of a former plantation. A massive coal ash spill from a TVA site in Tennessee was transported here, Uniontown, Alabama, in 2009 to a landfill, raising concerns over cancer and respiratory issues. This reflects how post-Reconstruction era Black communities denied political power and land rights were later targeted for hazardous waste dumping. Make sure you test the land and the water before you build a community. And if you are governing yourself in an abandoned town, find out why it was abandoned. And if you are living in a town or village that is now predominantly Black, understand the importance of addressing existing or potential environmental issues. Okay. Then in many cases, they knew about these environmental hazards and they just neglected them. This happened in the Ville in St. Louis, Missouri. The Ville was a historically Black neighborhood that dated back to Reconstruction. Nearby industrial pollution from lead smelting and other industries disproportionately affected the residents. Environmental cleanup often bypassed Black areas, allowing toxic exposure to persist. And in discussing these environmental issues, I got to cover the Flint water crisis. We're going to take a look at this video because, again, those of us that are builders, leaders, developers, we have to think about this. And for me, one of my very first projects, all of these things helped me realize what a blessed life that I live and how fortunate I am. Because Allah put in my mind, I can't even say I thought of this, but Allah put in my mind that I should become a business consultant. And my idea behind it was so that I could learn and be able to bring the knowledge back to my people and have experiences that a lot of other people didn't have. That was in my mind probably somewhere around high school. I don't even know where I may have read it somewhere. I'm not sure. I don't know. But Allah put it in and it just kept developing. So after I worked at the National Center and the Nation of Islam for a period of time, my very first project when I went into private consulting was a water project and building pipelines. And the second one was a highway project. When I saw what was going on in Flint, I knew exactly what they did and how they did it and why it happened. And what's interesting is I don't think they fixed it to this day. So let's check this out. This is important.
I'm drinking a gallon of water a day out of this tap. What have I been doing to myself?
From the time they switched, it was not drinkable. We knew about people losing their hair. We knew about people getting sick. We knew it was just horrific.
Flint is now getting its water from the Flint River. A switchover a little more than a month ago. It's not sitting well with some residents and businesses who say the water smells and they don't want to drink or even shower with it.
The city's utilities department flushing out water mains, hoping to eliminate bacteria that prompted a boil water advisory.
We were all pretty unhappy with the boil advisory. We were like, we're going to boil our water. I was making some rice, so I had to boil the water before I boiled the water, essentially. But that was it. Still showered in it, still did everything else in it.
The Flint River is in fantastic shape.
Flint city officials insist Flint River water is good enough to drink, but it's been causing problems at General Motors.
In January of 2015, they sent a letter out that said that the water had TTHMs in it. And the TTHMs, you could not boil the water. If you boiled it or if it got too hot, the vapor was more harmful.
Flint's river water was treated, but its salt content was overlooked, causing piping to corrode.
Without corrosion controls in the water, like orthophosphates, chloride can begin to promote electrochemical reactions, where oxygen dissolved in the water can start to pull electrons away from the metal. This results in metals being leached out of the pipes, namely iron, copper, and lead. This is similar to how salt makes your car rust faster.
Flint, Michigan is now facing much more than just lead poisoning.
In the summer of 2014, people in Flint started dying in what would become one of the worst outbreaks of Legionnaire's disease in U.S. history.
Between June 2014 and November 2015, there were 87 cases in which 10 people ended up dying.
The state stopped our investigation. They prohibited communication between the Center for Disease Control and Genesee County Health Department. You could see that it was an intentional, deliberate method to prevent us from doing our job.
I feel like it was the spring of 15, and you started to see people posting pictures of jugs of brown water or bathtubs full of water.
Freaking ridiculous.
I want you to see the nice water that I have to pay for.
Apparently now, when you live in Flint, you got to worry about water.
This is not a big debate. This is nothing that nobody can figure out.
In Flint, Michigan, we pay more for water than any other city or state. We pay more for water we can't drink, water we can't cook with, water we can't bathe with. All we use it for is to flush it down the toilet, but we got to pay for it.
We have not used the baptism pool in the last couple of years because the water is so bad that after we found out we couldn't drink it, we wouldn't dare try to baptize nobody in it.
One time when we got out the pool and dried off, we all had rashes on us.
I think that the people who knew about it was at fault because something could have been done a whole lot sooner. My question is, why did it have to get to this?
The governor who appointed 2 city managers to run Flint with almost unlimited powers.
It was the governor's emergency manager running Flint who ordered the switch.
I think he's very culpable. I mean, he helped appoint these emergency managers.
It was done to save money.
You make business decisions like that, you don't care anything about the people.
Let me start here. Anyone who is concerned about lead in the drinking water in Flint can relax. There is no broad problem right now that we've seen with lead in the drinking water in Flint.
When nobody pays your attention, when nobody listens, what do? You keep screaming, you keep hollering, you keep fighting, and the Lord will send help. And he sent Virginia Tech.
When the folks from Virginia Tech came up, that's when I started to go, okay, this has to change.
It was the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality's responsibility to make sure that the city of Flint dosed appropriate corrosion control into the water. That's a federal law, and they violated that federal law.
For some reason, Flint is the only city in the country who does not have a federally approved corrosion control program in place.
A friend of mine, Kevin, he lives across the street from basically ground zero for all of this.
Leanne Walters can only wonder out loud what the future holds for her 4-year-old son, Gavin. He was diagnosed with extremely high blood levels of lead.
He lived right across the street from her. And she was the one who started talking to, I believe it was Dr. Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech.
She had the city come and test her water twice, and both times they found elevated levels of lead. And she tried to work with the Department of Environmental Quality to address this problem, but they said that they wouldn't help her.
Emergency Manager Ambrose and Mike Prisby from the DEQ called me a liar and a stupid in the public meeting about the water bottles that I brought in full of my brown water.
And though the Rick Snyder administration in Michigan and local officials kept saying everything was okay, even after some of them knew it wasn't okay.
She wasn't taken seriously until she was finally backed up by the medical community and science.
The lead levels have been going down in children
for decades.
For decades, and in the city of Flint. They've been going down every single year. But after this water switch happened, they spiked up.
Unfortunate situation that I do apologize for. Willful blindness to the pain and suffering of Flint residents.
We have no choice. We answer to one man, and that is the governor of Michigan, Snyder. And so if he want to take control, he want to be in charge, then he have to be accountable for what has happened to our communities.
Anyone who is concerned about lead in the drinking water can relax.
Governor Snyder, do you admit that you personally received a letter on January 18, 2015 from Flint's mayor begging you to take action and warning, quote, there is nothing more important in Flint right now than fixing the water problems.
I received a letter from the mayor dated that, and I took action on items within that letter.
Relax.
You didn't go to Flint until October 2015, is that right?
I don't know if that's correct or not.
Relax.
And there you are, dripping with guilt, withdrawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead level best to spread accountability to others.
Relax.
Your Department of Environmental Quality was, quote, primarily responsible for the crisis in Flint. Do you also admit that here today?
Yes, and I took actions immediately based on their
Your
recommendations.
task force found that your officials at MDEQ did not implement corrosion control, which, quote, led directly to the contamination of the Flint water system.
Relax.
Lead is an irreversible neurotoxin that causes problems with your cognition, your IQ, your behavior. Our whole community has been traumatized. They are psychologically traumatized from this exposure.
I'd like to just have a full battery of tests done to see if anything has changed, because while I feel healthy, I have absolutely no idea what's going on inside. And for me, the biggest takeaway is, what has this done potentially to me and to my wife and anybody else who might have been drinking it and not knowing?
You have a choice. We don't have a choice. It hasn't been a choice.
You know, we have to make sure that leadership like that don't get reelected. The problem is we have to make sure we don't replace them with the same type of predatory people who be willing to put thousands of people at risk just to save $1. It's interesting because it's one thing when you have money, you have the funds, but you're like, we don't want to spend it on that. We don't want to spend it on improving the water quality. We don't want to spend it on that. There's so many things that they could do, and literally they didn't. With everything that they could have done wrong, they did wrong. I'm not even going to go all into it, but I can name 7 or 8 things that they didn't do and that they actually could do to improve it. And it looks like they still have not done that to this day. So my point being with all of this, as we are doing for self, we have to remember to introduce much needed goods and services in our community. The program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us to focus on the needs of the people. Focusing on the needs of the people is somewhat recession proof. Okay. So understanding, we did a whole series on the accomplishment of the Muslims on this network. And so you can see some of the industries and some of the things that are determined to be somewhat recession proof. That's one thing. The other thing is for us to begin to look at this concept of separation as multifactorial. There's different forms and different versions of it, which we've talked extensively about all week. And then we have to be very tactical in our approach, because there's a lot of things we have to think about. Warfare is not just guns and fire. And while we have to be able to protect ourselves against the violence, but there's so many different aspects of warfare. And having been a builder now for a number of years and a developer, and having experienced many of the attacks and acts of warfare and terrorism, I can tell you some of the things that are done. So when we're putting together these think tanks, because really, in essence, that's what builders do. Those conversations at the dinner table are literally like mini think tanks. Those invitations to other business owners and the conversations, the golf outings, all of that kind of stuff, those are mini think tanks. They're ways in which people become cohesive. They get together, they can put together deals. And that is what we want to establish and begin to work on the 26th of June from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Elijah Muhammad House. Let's network. Let's share our products and services. You never know. There may be some initiatives going on, because in the message to the Black man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that 6 or 8 of us should go into business together, pool our resources. Okay. So let's stop complaining. Let's stop waiting for somebody else to do it. He said 6 or 8 of us go into business together. So we can open grocery stores. We can open dry cleaners. We can open up whatever we want. But pooling our resources is going to be critical. There's enough intelligence among us. A lot of us have jobs that we do in critical industries, things that we've learned that we could bring over to this building process. So everybody's not going to be the leader of the project. Everybody's not going to be the owner, but everybody can contribute in some way. All right. And so we want to, talk about that on the 26th and just share. And if it's just a few of us, that's fine too. We can have little group talks, but I really want us to start networking with one another. I want us to start with getting to know one another, spending time with one another, giving each other a little bit of mercy, loving on each other a little bit. You know, we all crazy. It's something wrong with all of us. Most of us are sitting up so busy talking about folks that we ain't got no friends. We ain't got nobody we interact with, because something's wrong with everybody. Some of us are mad at the church, mad at the sorority, mad at the fraternity, mad at the mosque. So anybody that comes up out of that situation, we don't got no mercy for them. We negative, we picking them apart, we dogging them out. These are the kind of things that we have to stop. See, just trust people until you can't. If they show you that who they are, then believe them. And then you can strategize around it. You still might be able to utilize them. But once you know, okay, now you know, boom. But to be this process of trauma where hurt people, that we keep practicing on one another, laughing. I was watching a clip somebody sent me from the Breakfast Club the other day. And they reported some settlements that Dame Dash had to pay out. And then there was conversation around, a lot of people in the chat like laughing at Dame. And then there was conversation around, a little bit of conversation around, I don't think they intended it to be, but it came off like mocking him, saying, you know, he's doing for self, he don't want a boss. And then kind of taking away his credibility to say, okay, I pay attention to these people, and they name certain people, but folks who going through stuff like this, basically, I'm paraphrasing, can't be subject matter experts. That's not true. That's not true, because a brother like that who's gone through what he's gone through can teach you and I a lot. And he talked about, you know, ain't nothing wrong with a job. You're right. There's nothing wrong with a job. There's nothing wrong with stability. That's cool. But if the brother or sister say, hey, you know what I want to do for self, we can't step on them and crush them. And I know sometimes those of us that do for self, especially with Black men, tend to be sometimes a little bit of aggressiveness, a little bit of arrogance, because the mindset has to be a certain way. You got to move without doubt. And the way I looked at it, even though there were companies he had to give up, there was a certain, I think something like $800,000 worth of stuff. I looked at him as still being successful because he went through that and he had something, some assets that he could give in order to pay his debt. And some of these other names that they mentioned of people who they said, well, I follow this person and that person. You don't know what that person has gone through. It just so happened that somebody like Dame Dash lives his life out loud. So you know all the nuances, you know it, the ups and downs of it, and he's been very vocal. So I'm just saying all that to say, I don't know Dame. I'm just saying all to say, I didn't like that conversation, and I didn't like the way we handled it. And I think that, yes, we do have to call out things that we see are wrong. We have to be careful that the wanton criticism doesn't prevail in our evaluation or analysis of the situation. And if we are on platforms where we can have those conversations, being mindful that there's not an excessive amount of criticism towards everything Black. Because I'm sure there's some other people from other cultures who have gone through that and then some, but there's not a lot of attention or over criticism on it. But as soon as it's somebody Black, boom, look, guess what happened? They had to pay this, they had to do that. This is what happened to them. I don't like that. See, there's no manual out here for this stuff. We are all learning. This is why we get on podcasts like this. We're studying what happened in history. And I don't mock nobody who stepped out on faith and attempted to do something that nobody else has done. See, we mock people who have courage. We mock people who are stepping out on faith. We mock them by constantly keeping score instead of supporting and loving on them. And maybe they're not a lovable person. I don't know. But let's not put that in our vibration where we're mocking people in our community who are stepping out and making an attempt to make a difference. Do you realize how many Black people there are out here who can't get a job? And so somebody like a Dame Dash is motivation for them. And I'm not saying the other people you named is not motivation, but they might not be able to connect to those people because they may feel like those people come from a different background. And they can't go get a job. They just can't go downtown like you or I and work at a radio station or work wherever. They can't go get a job. So we have to be very mindful of that type of thing. Okay, so review the series on the accomplishment of the Muslims that we've done on the channel. We've been talking all week about separation and strategic thinking. I want us to start thinking about it differently, more tactical, in a multifactorial way. Let's start going over that. Let's start studying what the Muslims want and believe so that we understand how to make it happen in modern times. And no matter where we are, and no matter what situation we are all in a space where we can do what? We can take these principles to help be the vanguard of a civilized society that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that we should be doing. So there's deep principles on that, okay? And we tend to look at the Nation of Islam in a religious sense because that's how the broader community looks at us. But this is a way of life. It's a whole way of life. It's a way of being, down to the mustard seed and every fiber of your being. It's a process. It's a way of life. This is how we're going to make change. We're going to make systemic change. When we put the label or the category of religion on it, it seems temporary, it's part-time, But that's not how he teaches us to view the self-improvement process and the resurrection process that he takes us all through. So we're going to continue to bring this kind of content. We're going to keep moving out there. There's lots of things that are on the horizon, both for the network, for the house. You're going to see a lot of programming that's out there. I was in a couple of meetings yesterday where we are starting some of the other programming on the history of women in religion. We've taken a deep dive into that and doing some of that research. That's going to be powerful because I don't think you all have ever seen that. I did a short series here on the network about women in religion, but you're going to see these women in real time and their contributions to the movement. Never seen before. We tend to just keep recycling the same stuff over and over again, but we want to bring to you new and fresh perspectives so that you can understand it and latch on. Okay, so go to the website, ElijahMuhammadHouse.com. If you forget that, go to SajdahHouse.com. They all point to the same thing. Register for the business networking event that we're having on June 26th, 6 to 8 p.m. Okay, and tune in tomorrow morning. We're going to talk a little bit about self-improvement and how the self-improvement process is germane to our whole process of separation. All right. So thank you all. Thank you for joining this morning. I know I went a little bit over. I was on my soapbox. I apologize. I see some of you all in the chat. Hey, Mom. Good morning. CAD Dupree. Walaikum salam. Let's see. Dr. McKinnis, ASA. Walaikum salam. Robert 11X says, ASA sister, and thank you for the information you bring. Praise be to Allah. Make sure you go back. Look at this series this week. Look at separation. We talked about the black settlements, all of that. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Again, this network, this stuff we're working on, this ain't for everybody. You're not going to see thousands of people going, yeah, I want to take charge of that. But this is for leaders, builders, do-for-selfers, people who are looking at the program that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gives us, not as a religion, but as a way of life. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Let's see. We're going to go out. I got a nice commercial for y'all. Don't go anywhere. Check it out. Make sure you support the network, support the vibration. Go to Cash App, Sajdah Enterprises, or you can Zelle us. But make sure that you give and support so we can continue to keep this kind of thing going. Support the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. She's a big, beautiful edifice, but she cost your sister a lot of money, okay? And we're getting lots of awards, but those grants that a lot of those people get that go along with those awards, we have not received them. So inshallah, that will happen in the future. In the meantime, continue to support the things that I'm working on, the things that I do. If you want to book me, go to book.SajdahWendyMuhammad.com. Let's just keep going. We're not going to wait for the grant funding. I know I have not been waiting. I have just been grinding projects. I had plans back in 2018 when I had access to $6 million. I was just going to go to Africa and live like a queen. But Allah had different plans. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the legacy that he is helping me to build. And I'm grateful for those of you who are supporting in this effort. So stay tuned. I'm not absent of bringing other people on board. Y'all know I'm always trying to support everything everybody's doing. So send me your stuff. Tag me on Instagram. Tag me on Facebook. I'm happy to support and see what I can do. All right. So we'll be on tomorrow. I have a speaking engagement this weekend, but we're still going to go forward. We're still doing coffee talks tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And the money psychology workshop is Sunday night at 7 p.m. All right. Peace and blessings, family. I will see you all, inshallah, tomorrow morning.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
I have told you the first part of my life, I was a farmer in Georgia. Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. Nobody there was looking at me blind and you thought that I would ever be a scientist teaching the world. Yes, sir. See, it is time that brings all that.